Welcome to Exit 13 Sports. Featuring the youth sports in the Lake Nona area. Now your host, David Grimm.
All right, good evening, everybody. It is June 29th. We are almost done with June. I can't believe it. This year, 2021, is going super fast. And we have the 4th of July holiday coming up this week. I'm sure everybody's got lots of big plans. Next week, I'll be spending some time away from work over at Walt Disney World. A little staycation going on over there, so that'll be a fun week. And you are listening to Exit 13 Sports. Once again, this is David Grimm, your host. As always, you can catch us on our YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook, all at Exit 13 Sports. Or you can also download the Nona.fm app directly from the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. Nona.fm, you see, it's a new platform that not only covers local news here in the Lake Nona area, but also has some podcasts on there, including the Exit 13 podcast, as well as our very own Kevin Kendrick. Our Nona with Kevin Kendrick is also housed here on the website, Nona.fm, and you can also find all of the podcasts on the Apple Store, and Spotify. So once again, it is June 29th. We're super happy you're here. It's a great show. I have a wonderful guest, very excited. I've known this young man. I was just trying to do the math in my head. 18 years, way back when he was a student at University High School over there on the east side of town while I was coaching football and baseball. So I got to know Kyle, our guest. I just spoiled a little bit. Way back when I was an athletic coach. So little sports news going on. Not too much going on in the Lake Nona area when it comes to youth sports. I know that we have a lot of our girls volleyball players are out in Las Vegas right now for the national tournament that's taking place out there. And I know there's many individuals, I've seen their posts all over Facebook, they're participating out there in Las Vegas. So good luck to them. Also this past weekend and week, there was nationals for gymnastics. And we have a lot of our young athletes that live in the Lake Nona area that go to some of the local gymnastics locations, especially Reflex, that were competing over there in the nationals. And I want to give a special shout out to a young lady that I know very well, Jasmine Michi. She was the national champion in one of her events. I believe it was the balance beam, and I believe got 4th overall. So congratulations to her. And again, not a whole lot going on. We got the hockey playoffs. Tampa Bay won their first game last night. Orlando City Soccer is hot. They won 3 games last week, and then they play again this Saturday over there at Exploria Stadium. I think they host New York Red Bulls, I believe. Also, Euro 2021, also known as Euro 2020, has been going on. The round of 16, first round of the knockout stages just ended today. One of the teams that I root for, Germany, got beat 2-0 to England. So, and also yesterday, huge upset where France, which was the favored team for the entire tournament, got defeated also. So wonderful save by the goalie that stopped the 5th penalty kick that France had to make and ended up losing in penalty kicks. So congratulations to them. And then one special athlete that we've had here on the Exit 13 Sports Show, Zane Durant, is going to be a senior coming up. He is making his official announcement. This is based upon what his social media pages said, as well as his mom. He's making his official announcement on July 4th. That's this Sunday. Going to talk about what college he is choosing to go to. I know he's been visiting the University of Miami. He went to Indiana, Penn State, and we hope, fingers crossed, that he chooses UCF. But no matter where he chooses, we know Zane's going to have a great college career, and we wish him the best, and we are very happy for him. So that's a little bit of the rundown on sports. We're very happy to have our guest here tonight. Just a great young man who's been in the Orange County area for quite some time. As I mentioned, I was one of the football coaches and baseball coaches at University High School back in 2003 and 2004, and had the opportunity to coach this young man. Not coach him personally; he's a quarterback's coach, or he's a quarterback. Excuse me. I was a wide receivers coach, so hand in hand was able to work with him very closely, and then of course followed his career in college and beyond, and have seen all the great things he has done. So rather than just name him by name, I'm going to show a quick highlight of the very first game that took place at Bright House Network Stadium. Whether it's not Bright House anymore, Spectrum, I don't know, but they actually call it the Bounce House mostly. So here's a quick little highlight for you.
That's a golden drive that Israel has engineered to this point. Goes play action, stands in, and delivers it straight to Smith. Inside the 10. Knocked out of bounds inside the 5. They'll mark him at about the 2-yard line. It's first and goal Knights, a gain of 24. The change is enough for the UCF. This is an excellent decision by Kyle Israel. He's going to get a runoff with the wide receiver. Kevin Smith is going to fill the void and watch the throw by Israel. He invites the defensive end across the line of scrimmage, and then with perfect timing lays it outside. Again, UCF spreads out Texas on first and goal at the 2. A shotgun for Israel. Inside. Touchdown. Kevin Smith. There's a flag down on the far side. We'll have to check the penalty. The Bright House is bedlam for now. Outside. Defense number 38. Wow, and if possible, it just got louder.
So welcome our guest, Kyle Israel. What's up, buddy?
Happy to be here, David. It's nice to reconnect. When you said 18 years, there's not many people that remind me that I've known anybody for 18 years.
I did the math, and I was like, man, that makes me really old, and you're getting up there. So,
I luckily I don't feel like it yet. You don't look like it. Looks like you've stayed in great shape.
That's good.
So props for that, because that's not easy. But happy to be here.
I went to the gym this morning. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna call myself out. I went to the gym. I was in the parking lot. I think I was reading something online, and then I looked inside. And then I left. I just did not feel it at all. And I actually, I started doing this juice cleanse yesterday.
Yeah.
And yesterday was pretty easy, I will say. Today's been a little bit more challenging. I swear, every time I turn around, there's either a food commercial on the TV or like someone on like social media that's doing like a food picture or food everywhere. So today's been a little challenging. I would say I have stuck with it, so that's good. And it's the first time I've ever done it, so we'll see what happens. It's supposed to be 5 days, so we'll see how that goes. So, you remember that game, Texas? I will tell you, that was one of the most enjoyable moments as a UCF alumni, as a UCF fan, as a kid who grew up in Central Florida. I remember when I played flag football up in Altamont Springs there when I was younger. UCF's football program was really kind of starting. It started in '79, I believe it was, but this was probably the late '80s, and I remember they came out to the flag football league that I competed in and talked to us. And ever since then, I've been a UCF fan. And so to me, being on that field and seeing, like, didn't have to drive over to the Citrus Bowl and the packed crowd. I remember when it rained. I think it was in the third quarter, and it was so stinking hot out, and it rained, and everyone got jacked. And to be honest with you, it would have been nice to win that game. I would have looked back, and it would have been a finer moment. But I guess, in a way, it kind of showed us where we had come and how far the program had gone. But we still had so much to do, as a football program, just as a university in general. So.
No, I totally agree. I remember that day well. I think the most vivid memory for me was pregame, being in the locker room, and obviously throughout the entire spring and summer, we had watched this like erector set be built out of nowhere. And you imagine, what's the environment going to be like? And it being the bounce house, it's super loud with all those aluminum bleachers. And I can very clearly remember the sound that was reverberating down through the locker room prior to the game. It gives me goosebumps right now to think about it. But a great game, a great opponent. Steve Orsini did a phenomenal job, a couple of years before, convincing Texas to come in for that game. And I think they were probably ranked maybe number 6 at the time.
They were definitely in the top 10.
They were a top 10 team. Colt McCoy, Jamal Charles. And we gave them a run for their money. So I don't know if you remember this, but last summer during COVID, ESPN did like a UCF day, and the first game was that UCF Texas game. And I had not watched it since the Sunday after the game.
Oh, wow.
I hadn't seen that game since, and I watched it with my 8-year-old brother. And honestly, I now know why I compartmentalized some of that game. I threw a pick 6 there that kind of hurt us in the third quarter. And my brother got really mad at me watching the game, asked me what I was doing. And I said, clearly, I'm not sure. But for UCF fans, for a guy like me that basically grew up, I'm like Dean Road through and through. Not that that's a big landmark, but for me, that's exactly where I'm from. So to see the stadium on campus, for the fans to have a place to call their own, and really ultimately as well for the students to be able to tailgate on campus, walk to the game, not have to worry about, making their way down to the Citrus Bowl. It was a culmination of a lot of hard work by a lot of people, and it hasn't lost its luster ever since.
No, it's a great place to watch a football game. I don't care who you're playing, what the situation is, but just the proximity that you have to the field, and the upgrades that they've done, Steve Sloan's a part of, and then of course, can't think of his first name, White.
Danny White.
Danny White brought in, obviously they added, some premium seating. They have the black and gold cabana. They have the end zone suites. Just the game day experience, I mentioned game day, but, I was lucky enough to experience that as well. I went over there with my older daughter, Shelby, and we watched game day. And it was like so surreal, because I know there's people around the country that think UCF fans are obnoxious and, they always tell us to slow our roll and know our place. But I think that, some programs had rapid growth, some teams, TCU comes to mind, where
Boise State.
Yeah. Even Boise State, I think, came on quickly, but I don't think they've blown up as much as I thought they would have.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that has a lot to do with conference affiliation. But, TCU, they started to win, and then they got into the Big 12. And then, it was very apparent that conference and being in a major conference, Power 5, gives you so many more opportunities. And I think UCF has kind of had to go the slow road, from the days of, 1AA. And then when Dante came and they moved up to single A as independents, had great success. Some of those teams were awesome. But again, we didn't have a conference, and they got into the MAC conference, which, I think that was probably a stretch to go to that conference just because it wasn't something that, geographically was good for us. But I think it was just an opportunity that we had to take. And then, of course, getting into Conference USA, and then what we thought was the Big East, which turned into not the Big East, and now we have the American Conference. So, and to look what's happening now in the playoff structure, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's just been awesome to experience, and my wife does not understand my passion for UCF and football and just UCF in general. We were watching. Remember when they played Duke in the second round of NCAA? I mean, I fell on the floor. I mean, I was distraught.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when I was coaching over at Freedom High School, we lost a game we shouldn't have lost. We were 5-0 at the time, and we lost on like a Hail Mary, and my entire weekend was ruined. And it's kind of hard to explain to people, where sports is not as important to them, how it feels when your team loses, no matter whether you're a player, coach, or just a fan. So,
no, I agree. Even in my time, and I know we'll talk a little bit later about my travels, in my time in Germany, when I started paying attention to soccer and I started going to soccer games in the cities that I played for, it is truly such a cultural fabric where people, eat, sleep, breathe soccer. And I think that, to your point about the UCF fan base, because we have such a young fan base, because social media has become such of a big element, right. We come out in forces and drones with our social media. So I think really we've come a long way, but I truly do feel like this is almost still feels like the beginning of what's to come. And you mentioned the college football playoff and the potential expansion to 12 teams and what that means for us, what that means for the American Athletic Conference. I mean, you think about money now, playoff money coming into a conference that has a footprint in Orlando, Tampa, Dallas, Houston, Cincinnati. These are big markets. And if you put a little fuel behind that financially, it can be the type of scenario that really makes us feel lucky to be in the American, because the path to the playoff doesn't have as much resistance. But I think that UCF is still just, even though we had 2017 and everything we've done over the last 3 or 4 years, I think a lot of the exciting stuff is still ahead.
Yeah, I hope so. And, I think that I was reading an article the other day, would UCF be so quick to accept a major conference invite at this point? And this might actually eliminate the conversation of any expansion, at least for the short term, because there is an opportunity to get in. Like you said, a team from the American Conference is going to have a better, not easier, because it's still tough to win your conference, but not as challenging to go into the Big 12 or SEC, ACC, and Big 10 and win your conference championship there. So
there's teams in that conference, David, that are never going to make it into the playoff. I mean, there's just, half those teams are never going to make it.
And that's a whole argument. People, it killed me when, we had our undefeated season when we beat Auburn in the Peach Bowl, and people are like, oh, you play a SEC schedule every week, you're not going to go undefeated. Well, the ignorance of that statement just frustrated me so much, because guess what? If I have an SEC schedule, that means I'm in the SEC, which means I have SEC money, I have SEC recruits, I have everything that the SEC programs have, and maybe even more than some of those smaller tier teams like you mentioned. So, that argument that you're not in a big conference, so you're never going to do that well, is just stupid, because people don't understand the differences between a UCF and what we've accomplished at the level we have. 2, 3 occasional 4-star athletes, where all these other programs in these Power 5 conferences are getting, 3, 4s, and 5s. So with those resources, I can't imagine what UCF could accomplish in every sport, because we're not just successful at football, but if you go back and look, especially this past year, every sport across the board is really successful in that athletic program. And I think that's a testament to the entire university and everything they've accomplished when it comes to growing it. And obviously I think it's now the number 1 largest enrolled university in the country, 1 or 2. I know usually Arizona State Ohio State and us to kind of flip flop. But I think you're right. I think there's great things to come. I think at some point they'll expand that stadium, and where we get 40,000 will look like 60,000, and
Yep.
I think it'll be awesome. And I'm glad I'm here to experience it. Like I said, I've been a fan since I was a young kid, and obviously as a student, I did have a chance to go kick as a walk on, but because of my injury, I just made the decision that I needed to hang up my cleats and coach. So so
Protect the neck. It was
Yeah.
neck, right?
yeah, it was my neck. Yeah. So, but so obviously you had great success there at UCF. You were part of the first ever American Athletic Conference. Actually, back then it was Conference USA championship. Had the chance to play alongside one of the best running backs, if not probably the best running back that particular year. Just fell short of the record for the all-time yardage in a season. What were some of the biggest things you took away from that experience at UCF, being a starting quarterback in major college football, being under the tutelage of Coach O'Leary, who has a strong reputation of being a quality coach, difficult at times, probably for players. Definitely as fans, we got frustrated with him, but just what are the things you learned that have propelled you throughout your adult life?
I think that's a good question. For me, one of the big things that I think about early on is just the nature of when we came in there. We didn't win a football game in 2004, and we were playing 20 true freshmen. I played and started in a handful of games my freshman year, and to see what a group of individuals can do when they come together. And it doesn't happen right away, right? With a lot of adversity early on, but working through that. And then 4 years later, coming to the point where you win a conference championship. A lot of the guys that came in my class only played 4 years, not many redshirted. And that was one of the big things that, in the startup world today that I keep in mind is, hey, there's going to be challenges along the way, but you've got to continue to persevere and pursue. So I think that was one of the main things. Coach O'Leary, yes, challenging to play for at times, specifically as a quarterback. With the way that he coached through fear rather than Coach Frost through love.
Yeah.
To that point, you can see what happens. Sometimes youth these days respond to that love better than fear, and all of a sudden we didn't win a game in 15, and 2 years later we go undefeated. It's kind of an interesting parallel there, but what Coach O'Leary did do was just demand that you show up, that you're on time, that you're early. He didn't really accept excuses. At times it felt a bit like the military, I'm not going to lie. But I think overall that rigor, that day-to-day structure, that day-to-day expectation, it matriculates into all elements of your life with whatever you're doing in the future. I still think, one of the big things, and we can talk later about Nestry, but that brought me to Nestry is I still think that we're missing as a whole for athletes specifically that transition from college to the next stage of life for the 99% that don't go pro, as we've heard in that commercial. You kind of lose. I walked across the stage with a diploma, essentially lost my identity to some extent, and you leave this rigor, right? The structure. You lose 125 relationships all at one time. We know how hard one relationship loss can be, and you do that with a lack of identity. And so I did struggle for a year or two just trying to figure out, who am I? What do I want out of life? I've identified as this for so long. And that was a really big challenge for me, but it came back to those kind of core pillars that Coach O'Leary instilled in you along the way. Perseverance, hard work is cliche. I like to say to work hard, you have to do hard work. So really finding things you can sink your teeth into, which I was lucky to do. But he was a coach that won a lot of football games in retrospect, considering that, those 2 seasons where he was essentially 0-27, with 2-star, 3-star players, guys with no stars, sent guys to the NFL that were only had one offer. And when you're a coach that can cultivate talent like that, identify talent like that, I joke about Coach O'Leary, from time to time because of just his nature, his personality, who he was. And if you're a fan, you've been exposed to that as well, as much as anybody in the facility. But at the same time, you take a step back and go, man, in his tenure, where we were when he came in to where we were when he left, although it was a disappointing 2015 season, he built a program. He literally built a program. And so kudos to him, credit to him for number one, staying late into his career and doing that when he could have walked away and, retired at his lake house in Atlanta or at the beach like he is now in Palm Coast. I have a lot of respect for him, and I think that he put us in the right direction. And Danny White and Coach Frost and now Terry and Coach Malzahn and Coach Heupel as well. We won a lot of football games under him. I think they're kind of continuing to escalate off of that foundation that Coach O'Leary built.
Yeah, I think that UCF would probably have not have been on that ESPN game against Texas in a brand new stadium had O'Leary not been a part of that.
I know he wouldn't have, actually. No chance.
Because he's the one that said we got to have a stadium on campus to get students there, and he understood the importance of it. And so I think that was key. And if anything, I would say, that's probably why the statue's there. And I know some people are like, why is his statue there at the bounce house? But, I completely agree. We obviously had some tough seasons. And, in this day and age of flashy offense, lots of points, he was probably a little bit behind the times. But,
yeah, it wasn't fun for me to play. And I loved watching Kevin Smith run all over the place.
Yeah.
But we were so pro style and
it makes it horrible to play on PlayStation or Xbox.
Yeah.
You got to change the offense. But it's really interesting that you bring up, when you left and graduated and you kind of felt lost. For those of you who don't know, I broke my neck my junior year. I was able to be a place kicker my senior year in high school, and then after that, it was gone.
Yeah.
And, that was like my plan. My plan was to be a collegiate baseball player. My plan was to, potentially or hopefully have a chance to be a minor league baseball player. And I don't want to say it was taken away from me because, I'm blessed that I can walk. But it definitely drastically changed the trajectory of my life. And I really had struggles early on. And then, had some challenges that made the young part of my adulthood difficult. And, I think all of those experiences definitely taught me those characteristics that you mentioned, perseverance, putting things in front of you that were difficult and would challenge you. And I think that, I always try to do things that present a challenge to me, whether it be running for school board or, doing more stuff at work, doing a sports show, So, it's interesting that you shared that same experience out of college that I had out of high school. So,
Yep.
All right. So you graduate from UCF, you kind of, figure out what you want to do, and you end up in Germany. I forgot Germany. I know you played over in Poland as well, and you spent some time in Russia too. So
yeah,
got a chance to play semi-pro football over there. How was that experience? I know we've talked about it a lot.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was life-changing for me. When you're in this kind of in-between place, I was doing broadcasting for Bright House Sports Network and, really just trying to piece life together. Many people don't know I broke my foot in the Liberty Bowl, my last game at UCF in the third quarter. And, we didn't throw the ball enough for me to really have a shot at the next level. I kind of knew that and realized that. But when you love a game so much and you feel like you had more to offer, I got a message on Facebook from our head coach in Dresden, Germany, which is in East Germany near Prague, in the Czech Republic. He said, "Do you want to come play football?" So I immediately Googled Dresden, and I saw this, war-riddled city, and I'm like, what is this place and what is this league? But the German Football League, the GFL, was a great landing spot for me. I tell guys all the time who are kind of, I want to go make money right away out of college. I said, listen, I didn't make a ton of money. For context purposes, I made about 1,500 euros a month, all expenses paid. They gave me an apartment and a car. But I got really, really rich in life experience, really rich in perspective. And that was invaluable to me in the long run. And so I went over there, had a really good season, was league MVP that year, and came back. And, I was like, okay, I've had this great experience, and maybe I want to go back. At the same time, I'm feeling the natural pull, like, okay, I want to get into my career. But I really, to be honest, I didn't go to school and choose a degree with a career in mind. I'm a communications major, and I do something like international business or finance based on the world I'm in today. But if I could go back, had an opportunity. I really didn't want to go into corporate America. I wanted to see if I could pursue the entrepreneurial route. I worked 1 year in corporate I was a headhunter for my good friends over at Cavallero. And I said, you know what, I want to pursue something else. I happened to live with a guy, one of my best friends, who also was kind of in the same mindset, was working at Wells Fargo. And he said, let's try to find a business venture that we can raise money for and kind of create, our own thing. And what we did create was Terrace 390, which I think we opened in 2010, which is in the Harvey's Bistro location in the Bank of America building downtown, and had a lot of great success with that. Terrible story, but Casey Anthony's trial basically started the week after we opened, and so we just had this natural influx of Geraldo and Nancy Grace and this media, and the defense, prosecution, and Judge Perry over there every day at lunch. So we were lucky to have that at that time, and we ran the company for 2 years. We created the concept ourselves, pitched against 4 other restaurant concepts that wanted to get in there, negotiated a great deal, raised the money, and exited successfully. And so at that point in time, it was weird. It was like, okay, I did this successfully. I've made money. I'm not a millionaire. I can't retire or anywhere close to that. So now what do I kind of do? And I got into that place again where I was like comfortable, but still trying to figure out what my passion was. And I was doing broadcasting and radio and a number of other things, but had an opportunity in 2013 to be a drive time radio host for CBS Sports for about 9 months. And at the end of that tenure, got another Facebook message asking if I wanted to go play football for 2 games in Moscow, Russia. And again, I Googled. I knew obviously what Moscow was, but I just thought of like polar bears and winter and freezing cold, snow.
Before.
Exactly. And so went over there for about a month the first time, played in 2 games, and incredible travel experience, incredible life experience. And that parlayed into an opportunity to go back, played in the national championship, won the national championship in Moscow. I'll never forget, it was -9 degrees that day. Super cold, quite a different element for me. The first 2 games that we played in Moscow, we had about 10 to 13,000 people.
Oh, wow.
It was the first ever nationally televised game in Russia. We played the championship in St. Petersburg. I would say there was probably 300, 400 people there. It was not a well-attended game, and I don't blame anybody for not. I walked out and was like, I'm going back in. I don't want to play today. This is too cold.
That's
but
crazy.
It was crazy. It really was. And the guy that we were playing for, who owned the team, asked me if I wanted to move to Moscow full time in 2014 January to build an international football league where players were paid about 50 to 60 grand. So kind of a stepping stone where you can make some good money. And we were going to have 2 teams that played each other 6 times in the 6 largest cities in Russia. We had purchased an apartment complex to house both teams.
Okay.
And we were going to create like a Hard Knocks / real world documentary to kind of expose Russians to American athletes,
Yeah.
and start this league. And one
this
thing
is
led to another.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
I remember this story.
One thing led to another, and we were working out of our office space one day, and boom, door gets kicked down. Within a couple seconds, I have a sawed-off shotgun in my face, and basically got into the middle of this real estate battle. We were right next to Red Square, which is some of the most expensive real estate in the world, and they wanted us out. I still not even comfortable saying people's names really with who is involved, because the guy's an oligarch and very well connected, so I'll not mention him. But ultimately, 3 weeks later, the guy that I was working for was arrested, taken to a hard labor camp in Siberia. He actually spent the next 4 years there, never charged, never saw a judge. And I was given $5,000 cash and said, hey, things will be cool in a week. Come back in a week. And so I went to Austria with some friends that I met in Germany a couple years before, and a week led to 2, 3, and then I was a month in. And I was like, okay, my contract was through 2020. So I sold everything that I owned in Orlando. I had nothing. I basically had 3 bags. I only took one of the bags with me to Austria. And so I was at a point in I guess April or May of 2014 where I had $5,000 in cash. I had left $70,000 in a floor safe, conference championship rings, everything in Moscow. And luckily, when I was kind of at my wit's end, a quarterback in Germany in the GFL broke his thumb in a game that Saturday, and they called me and found out I was overseas and available. And so I played in Kiel, Germany for 8 months, the rest of 2014. And kind of really unfolded from there. When I was in Austria, I helped coach a quarterback with the local team there, and that coach went to Poland and asked me if I wanted to come play in 2015. And at the same time, I had met Jeff Rosenberg, who's a Lake Nona resident. Drew Rosenberg, his son, I think threw a no-hitter for Lake Nona baseball this past spring. But said they were looking for a partner to bring Little Greek Fresh Grill to Orlando and, grow the market to 15 locations. And I said, well, I've kind of signed this contract, but I'll be back pretty close to when you open. So I'd love to partner with you guys on that. So I went to Poland for about 8 months again, had one of those incredible experiences and came back. And that's when I started with Little Greek as an operating partner for our company here in Central Florida, and took that from 0 locations, and we're about to open the 15th. So that's kind of how that odd life journey brought me into the hospitality business and really to the next level of operational business. But I'll never be thankful enough for kind of that unique travel culture, kind of life enriching experience of playing abroad. And I tell guys all the time, listen, if you're not ready to go in that next stage of life, go play overseas. Yeah. Because you can get great film. You practice 3 days a week. Nobody's telling you what to do during the day. Bunch of freedom, a lot of time to think and process what you want out of life. Some former Lake Nona players that I've tried to push that direction and haven't gone, but for me, it was an incredible experience, and I learned a lot about myself, but parlayed that into Little Greek for the next 5 years up until 2019 November, 4.5 years, and really enjoyed working with Jeff and his family and taking a brand that was not in this market from no locations. We opened the Waterford Lakes Little Greek first and successfully expanded it.
One of the guests that I had, a couple of weeks ago, Michael Barilich, is currently playing in a Arena League team up north in, I want to say Wyoming, and he played over in Hungary. So, kind of similar story. He put himself out there and wanted to play at the level after he went to Florida State, and had that experience to go over there and play in Europe. And, you and I have talked about, like, when I was traveling and how amazing it is just to experience, you got to live there. I've only obviously visited, and, just how much you can learn about the world, learn about other people, learn about our own country. And to me, it's one of the most valuable things that anybody can do is to travel. And that's why I started doing trips with students, because, I saw the benefit that they were going to get from it. So that's awesome. A lot of people would give anything to have that longer career after college, and you had, the opportunity to do that. I know a lot of people, here in the Lake Nona area kept track of you, and, I did personally. And, for those people who don't know, like you mentioned, Jeff Rosenberg living in the Lake Nona area, but also somebody that bought one of the franchises. I imagine through you,
Matt Androsky.
The Androsky family, and they own the one over there. So,
great family,
great restaurant, and I've every time I've been, it's been a great experience. So,
good.
So let's stay on the topic of football. Obviously, we talked about UCF. I'm not going to get too much into that since we spent a lot of time on that. But obviously, the big story with college football is, I guess you could say two big stories. It was, a little bit about the playoffs, but until they actually make a decision, there's not much to talk about. But ironically, so today's Tuesday. On Thursday, a lot of the states around the country that passed new legislation, including Florida, have new laws going into effect. They say NIL. Some people say pay for play. Technically, it's the name, image, likeness laws that have come out, which is, it's not stating, and this is where some people get confused, they're not getting paid to play sports. They're just able to monetize their success, what they've done, throughout their athletic performance. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of torn. This might make it more legit, where it's obviously something that's happened throughout history, where players have gotten benefits, under the table through dark money or third party or boosters, whatever the case may be. There's all kinds of stories about it that happened throughout history, but this almost might make things a little bit more legit, and kids can have an opportunity to make some money, while these universities and television markets and conferences, they're making millions and millions, billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of torn, and obviously I want your perspective as a former collegiate athlete. I've seen what a scholarship offer looks like, the actual physical paper where they offer you the scholarship, and these are scholarships that are worth in amounts of $200,000 up, and so we'd all like that opportunity to have a full ride to go to college. Obviously, being an athlete, especially football, basketball, are the two big sports they're part of the discussion. What are your thoughts on it? Like, I'm just curious to know, do you agree with it? Do you think it's going to hurt the game? Do you think it's going to be like the Wild West? Like, I'm just curious to know, as a former collegiate athlete who definitely stays engaged in what's going on, what your thoughts are.
My first thought is that it seems messy. Like,
Mark Daniels uses that term all the time when he talks about it.
Yeah, I think that there are so many elements and layers to that. You think of human behavior in teammates, and one guy making X amount of dollars, another guy making absolutely nothing, who's, football's a team game, right? Contributing in their own way to the success of the team. You would hope that coaches have prepared kind of the psychology behind that element. I think that's really critical.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure how I would have felt if I may have been a guy that could have had some, financial gain. I know that I sold X amount of jerseys in my career, but Kevin Smith would have made buku bucks.
Right.
And what would that dynamic have been like? For me personally, I would have been okay with it. He earned every single dollar that he made that season. There's no doubt about that. But would have made, excuse me, let me clarify that statement, would have made. But I also, at the same time, I'm happy for the players. I've talked to Dylan Gabriel recently. He's, going to go out and do radio on Thursday and kind of start his personal branding campaign. I think many people saw yesterday he removed a lot of the photos from his.
Oh, UCF freaking the fans online were freaking out because last time he did that was when Heupel left.
Yeah.
But I think people that understand what Thursday is kind of understood what was going on. So
yeah, and I think that there's going to be sharks out there looking to take advantage of it. There's a lot of different startup companies that I see out there that are rightfully so looking for ways to monetize name, image, and likeness and get their piece. But when I think of personal branding, when I think of, hey, there's a time clock. There's 4 or 5 years that you get to take advantage of this if you don't have the opportunity to go play at the next level. And there are a lot of household names that we hear throughout the college football season that you never hear about ever again.
Right.
And that is a really critical time in these players' lives to, take advantage of their skill set, take advantage of the exposure that they're capable of receiving. And so at a high level, I'm pretty comfortable with it. But I do think it's overall messy with some of my points earlier. I'm interested to see how it plays out. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What are these players actually, doing from an advertising and PR perspective? I know our company, Nestry, we're thinking about Nestry athletes.
Yeah.
And how do we partner with some of these guys? And so, it's exciting. It's wild, wild westish. And I think that it is probably the only way you could find to get resources into athletes' pockets. Because I do think that if you tried to pay everybody, number one, that's not sustainable, in my opinion.
Not for the smaller schools, definitely not.
Not for the smaller schools when you think of recruiting. And number two, for UCF, it's a positive. We're in a market where it's growing every day. There's all types of businesses moving to Central Florida that want to, make an impact in the community. And I think it's a benefit as far as a recruiting tool for us because it's not Auburn, Alabama. It's not even Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I mean, we have a big market here. So once we've grasped what that opportunity actually looks like, I think that UCF's in a good position to take advantage of that in recruiting. And I'm interested to see what guys like Dylan, who's without a doubt going to at least preseason be in Heisman conversations and All-American conversations, can do with it. But again, if Dylan, for example, I believe Dylan's going to go to the NFL. I believe he's going to get drafted. But that clock for him ends in another year or two. And I like that these guys can at least set themselves up for success because you've seen it at the high school level and you've been around the game long enough at the college level to know that last game ends, you walk off the field and you're normal all of a sudden again. And you got to go figure it out like everybody else. Sure, there are some advantages, right? Sure, there's some exposure that helps with that process, but it's not as seamless as a process into the business world that most would assume it is because people cheered for you on Saturdays. And so I'm thankful that some of these guys will at least have some change in their pocket leaving school that'll set them up for the next stage of life.
And I think UCF's done a good job. I've read some articles about how they have created a program to help the kids with it. Obviously, during the spring game, they all came out with their Twitter handles, which, a lot of people around the country said that was kind of tacky. But I think Gus Malzahn and Terry understand this is where it's going. So like you mentioned, you have to show love and you have to you have to get the attention of the kids in the way they're engaged, and that's exactly one of the ways to do that. You mentioned these kids have a 4 or 5 year timeline. Some of them have a year. There's some kids that their senior year they come out and they leave their mark and end up in the NFL because of that one season. For some players like Mackenzie Milton, I think this is where this is important because you had a young man who was he was probably going to end up drafted and had an injury, and it took that opportunity away from him. And I know that players of that level typically have some sort of insurance policy. I don't know if he did at the time, but but at least it gives kids, like you said, an opportunity to help themselves out. And I think Mark Daniels always mentions how it's going to be ugly at first and messy, like you mentioned, but over time this will get a little bit more clear. You'll have people that will try to take advantage of the system, and eventually it'll iron itself out, hopefully.
It'll legitimize the handshakes that have been going on across college football forever.
Exactly.
But it'll be unique.
What's that guy down at University of Miami? I can't remember the name.
I know who you're talking about.
He's in jail now.
I can't either. I can't either.
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting, and like you said, it's going to be messy, and we'll see how it goes. But I know it's going to be a big topic. Probably Thursday, it's going to be nothing but in the sports news. As you see players, you mentioned Dylan Gabriel already hitting the radio to talk about his brand and things like that. But he seems like a great kid, and I know that there was an event a couple of weeks ago that they had over at the Burger U for Lynn, and
yep.
I'm sure you know Lynn, who's a huge UCF fan, and it was really cool to see Dylan there as well as some other players, and just a testament to his character, and looking forward to him this season. So, all right, so you did Terrace 390. You were in a creative restaurant. It was very successful. You then left for football, came back, and got involved in Little Greek, which has obviously been successful. Now you're shifting to a new adventure. It's not necessarily in the restaurant business, more of the, taking your experience as an athlete at all three levels. And Nestry Performance is your new startup, your new adventure. You're the chief operating officer. And, I wanted you to have the opportunity to talk about Nestry. And I know it's over there on near the town center in Lake Nona, right under Pixon Apartments.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys have partnered up with Tavistock, with the Lake Nona, official Lake Nona community, as well as some, professional athletes. And just talk to me about the background of Nestry and what's the vision, what's the goal, and how is it going to be utilized in the athletic world. You and I we're talking about the Performance Club and how it's going to have, a piece of opportunity to kind of share Nestry in the Lake Nona Performance Club that opens up July 15th. So this is your platform. I'm interested to learn more about it, and so talk away.
Yeah, appreciate that. So Nestry itself is an acronym for neurostrength. And really my co-founder, Dr. Tommy Shavers, who was a former UCF football player, captain of the team that beat Alabama back in the day, for some context, his career was ended at UCF from 7 concussive blows in a 3-week time frame. And shortly after he graduated, he started to enter into this period of time where he was suffering from cognitive decline. We know that CTE today can't be truly diagnosed until postmortem when you cut open somebody's brain, but he was having the symptoms or the express symptoms of what CTE is. And basically at that point in time, he decided that after his doctors told him to get him and his wife were married with their first young child in their mid-20s, and said to get your affairs in order. And he just really wasn't willing to accept that. And he said, if my brain can be injured, then why can't it recover? And not only recover, but if we're intentional about training it, why can't we improve the overall performance and cognitive function at a brain level, at a network level? And so that's what he did. He created something that we call the mental framing method, that uses the science of neuroplasticity, which is the foundation of our company. And essentially what neuroplasticity means is that your brain throughout one's life has the ability to change and grow, weaken, just like a muscle. And so we started just about 2018, as I was still with Little Greek. We were working on the side of getting the company going, and did some really early on work with a number of former players that were struggling from neurocognitive decline, very depressed. And that was my draw to Dr. Shavers. His wife was pregnant with her third child, and they would come eat at Little Greek all the time. And one day I just felt this felt like this conversation needed to happen, because I was mentoring UCF players who had graduated, who were all suffering from this depression and the struggle moving on to the next stage of life. And that was my calling to the business. And what we do is we really are at the intersection of brain health, mental wellness, and cognitive performance. And we train both the brain, literally, and the mind. And where we were prior to COVID, we use a technology called QEEG, which allows you to map the brain, and then based off that mapping, train the network level of the brain, which includes motor speed, psychomotor speed, executive function, mood and emotion networks, visual spatial awareness. And what we're really looking to do is we are training. We are performance-based. We've seen some results from that training that have really saved guys' lives. We're not in the concussion CTE space. A lot of our story, where the seeds of where we are today, was from those concussion CTE space, and we'll continue to do research and development there. But we are a neurostrength training company, and had an opportunity to meet with a Major League Baseball team to bring our first Nestri neuro room. You think of a weight room, locker room, training room. They were going to bring in a brain training room. And that was literally signed a deal with them the day that the NBA shut down from COVID.
Oh, gosh.
Got off a plane from Arizona at spring training, and they called and said, hey, we lost, you lost access to our players person to person, and our budget just changed instantly overnight with no fans. Right. And we were really forced to pivot. Tommy had always had the vision of Lake Nona being the place that our company should have its headquarters. Really, you see it more often now, but a couple of years ago we were in conversations, and he said this is going to be the Silicon Valley for health, wellness, and performance, and this is where we belong. And we've seen that vision in Lake Nona ever since. And so when we realized in real time, right, we're in the startup world, so we raise capital to survive. That runway was running out, and we said, okay, we can take this science that we've developed and this training methodology, and we can take it to the digital app tech space. And at the same time, we learned about Lead Sports, and LEAD stands for the legend of Adi Dassler, who founded Adidas. And they had started their accelerator venture capital group in Berlin, Germany, and Lake Nona is where they were starting their second accelerator. So we proved that we could take the science and convert it into a digital solution to really be able to take the mental and cognitive training experience more to the broader population, the everyday performer. Right. Is how we describe those individuals, and we applied for the program. And it was the last week. We were one of 6 startups selected out of 462 that were interviewed, and 1,700 that applied and got in. And so I'm currently sitting in the Verizon 5G Innovation Lab that they share with Lead Sports, and I've been working out of here since last September as a part of their accelerator program, and started the seeds of moving into this digital tech space. And today Nestri has 3 solutions. So we're in a beta testing phase with our 2 digital solutions, which is something one of them is called the Mindset Profile, which basically describes, it's an assessment that you take on your phone, 10 minutes, 25 questions, tons of insights. And it says, who is an individual when it matters most, looking through a performance spectrum. It's not personality. Many times personality, we think of it as this static thing. This is just who I am. But a mindset can be molded. A mindset can change and grow. And so we use that assessment to give teams, organizations, corporations a better understanding of who somebody is and how they'll fit into their team from a performance perspective. And it's also the entryway into our app. And so what we've created, as you see there on the app, is what we're calling the first digital workout environment to better both the mind and the brain. Some of our competitors, Calm, Headspace, they're very much into meditation. On the other end of the spectrum, there's Lumosity, who has brain games. We have our chief scientific officer, Dr. Elhanan Goldberg, is really world-renowned neuropsychologist and neuroscientist, developing our brain training in the app. And so we'll be releasing both our app and our mindset profile later this year, but it's very unique because the training and the content and the cognitive games that you train within the app are all based off your unique mindset. And that's really made a huge difference of separation for us from our competition. So those are those 2 solutions that we're currently in development of. We're really looking to do some larger scale beta testing here in the Lake Nona community, not only for members of the Performance Club, but individuals here, especially in Laureate Park, where they kind of have the living lab set up and are tracking people's lifestyle as they live in this community. So we'll plug into that. And then our third solution, now that in this time COVID has, I'm not sure that it's gone away. I won't get into the COVID conversation, but now that people are starting to interact again, because of our proximity to the Performance Club, because of the network, because of Tavistock being an investor with us, we have the opportunity to have 3 neuro strength training rooms in the Performance Club on the 3rd floor, where we will be flying in, elite athletes, corporate athletes to do our training, but also, again, for the everyday performer, those individuals who are looking to strengthen executive function, strengthen motor speed, strengthen psychomotor speed. Could be for athletics and sports performance, could be for corporate performance. It could be because you want to be sharper and you're a stay-at-home mom, and there's those challenges as well. And we all are coming off this COVID scenario where we've been isolated to some extent, luckily in Florida, not as much as many places around the world. But we'll do that in-person, high-level cognitive brain training as an option that somebody can come in and do if you're a member of the Performance Club, if you're not a member of the Performance Club. And then we'll look to scale that out, where our Nestry Neuro Rooms will be on site in colleges and universities, part of athletic programs, again, pro sports teams. And then the app will be that supplementary tool off of the neuro strength training. But eventually our goal long-term is to bring this science of neuroplasticity. Many people think, I get in my 30s, I get in my 40s, my brain is what it is. I am who I am. And that's just simply not the case. And I think it's a narrative that's not been told. It's a story that's not been told. We have the ability to cognitively improve each and every day based off our environments, our relationships, input, output, stimulation. And our training has had some extremely impactful results for individuals who were, especially the initial athletes that we were working with, who were struggling from different symptoms in their life post career, and have saved lives and changed lives. And we've also had athletes like Josh McCown, who used our training in his 2017 season with the New York Jets, where he really had a renaissance year. And so we're really parked in this performance and training space. You go to see a personal trainer to improve your overall health, and we're the type of personal trainer that can improve overall brain function, strength, and capacity. And so we're super excited about it. We've had great support from Tavistock, from the Lake Nona community, and really from the player population that's out there. Calvin Johnson, Julius Thomas are both investors and partner in the company. An incredible advisory board with Hugh Jackson and a number of other athletic directors, former head coaches. And so I love the restaurant and hospitality space because I got to interact on a day-to-day basis with the community, support the community, and I like customer service. At the same time, I always felt like, how can I transition back into a space that allows me to work with athletes, that allows me to take individuals and help them perform at a higher level in whatever that is. And Nestry, the startup world is not easy, but we've made a ton of progress. And, I thought this was a perfect platform to come on because we're telling the gospel of what Lake Nona is today and certainly what Lake Nona is going to be in the future as well.
Well, it sounds awesome. As a person that's going to be a member at the Performance Club, definitely intrigued on checking it out once you guys get in there. As you're talking about the program and the neuroplasticity.
Right. There you go.
A couple things come to mind. Number one, the VA hospital right down the street and the potential of helping veterans who could have concussion issues from anything that they suffered during their time serving, potentially helping them. And then I think about, because of the new career I have in selling specialty pharmaceuticals, they just came out with a new medicine a couple weeks ago that is the first new medication for Alzheimer's, and potentially helping minimize and even slow the issues with Alzheimer's and dementia. And I'd be curious to know, because I've heard that one of the things that they recommend individuals who are suffering early onset or going through Alzheimer's is different things to keep the brain working, different activities, different tasks, always trying to stimulate the brain. And so to me, that was the first thing I thought of, and the connection and how it could potentially help not just athletes at a high level, but potentially other individuals. So be curious to see how that evolves. And I think you hit it right on the head. This is going to be and continues to grow this community in technology, sports, and performance and fitness. And I think we just scratch the surface of it. And when that Performance Club opens up, it's just going to accelerate after that. So
truly, and I'll be in there often. So if there's any of your viewers or listeners who I'm typically wearing an N on my chest like this, grab me. I'd love to talk football, talk Lake Nona, any of those things.
Yeah, it's definitely that's why I bring people on here, is give them an opportunity to talk about what they're doing in the community. And we had Steve Miller, who's a golfer that is a PGA pro that talks about what he's doing. Obviously, we talk about the athletes as they're in their performance seasons, and we talk about all their successes. And in the next couple of weeks, we have some guests scheduled that have a direct impact to this community, and I'm very excited about them. And we'll talk about who those are going to be in the next couple of weeks. But I don't want you to take too much more of your time. I appreciate it. I've been waiting to have you on here and, to talk a little bit about UCF football, and to remind you that, I was a coach at University 18 years ago. But I always enjoy seeing you in the community and catching what you're doing. And if there's ever anything I can be a part of, don't hesitate to ask. And I wish you guys great success, and, everything that you have done since I've known you has been successful. And so I don't think this is going to be anything different. So
I appreciate that. I do. And your mom helped prepare me for this, by the way.
Absolutely. As the student assistant in her bookkeeping office.
Yep. I learned I was treasurer of SGA, and so we spent a lot of time together with invoices, and she gave me my first exposure to fiscal responsibility and making sure that you're working within a budget and can report the type of budget you're working within. And Bonnie was awesome, really
definitely
awesome.
Financially responsible and frugal. So, but I'll make sure she
please say hello
and catches her little shout out. But
and
I'm sure she'll get a kick out of watching this. So, Kyle, appreciate it, and great success to you and to all those listening. Nestry Performance. Real quick, remind everybody if they want to find out more, how they can find out access.
Yeah, they can go to nestryperformance.com. We'll actually have at the end of July a registration page if anybody wants to find out more about obviously our app, but as it pertains to the Performance Club and the packages that we've put together, and it's really truly performance training. So if you have a teenager or a young adult that's looking for performance enhancement, so much happens between the ears and we kind of just assume it happens. And so we've really made it an intentional training program for the brain. It's critical for overall performance, and it does have performance outcomes physically that you can kind of see develop. So nestryperformance.com. There'll be that registration page. We'll be a bit limited at the beginning because we've had so much early momentum and such a positive response locally and nationally. But again, please don't be afraid to walk up to me, grab my ear. Love to have a chat. Excited to be in the community. I grew up, as I said, on Dean Road. I didn't ever really conceptualize what was being built out here, although my family's been here for 17 years. My cousin Tucker was at Lake Nona. That's basically all I knew. So I love the community. I'm here to stay, and looking forward to the future.
Awesome, Kyle. Just a reminder, you can catch this podcast as well as all of the previous podcasts for Exit 13 Sports Show on Nona.fm. You can also catch us on the Apple Network, Spotify Network, YouTube, all at Exit 13 Sports at any time in the car, no matter where you're at. So, Kyle, thanks a lot. This has been Exit 13 Sports with David Grimm. We've been with Kyle Israel, former UCF quarterback. I think you're still quarterbacking for the Predators, right?
I played a season a year and a half ago, and my elbow said, no, it's time for you to be done. So gotcha. No more football, but still cheer those guys on, root for them, and awesome. It's always a fun experience to get out to.
All right, Kyle, appreciate it, and you have a good night. Everybody else have a great night.
Appreciate it, David. Thanks.